And hello! Today we're going to be playing, today I'm starting a series in Victoria 3. We're going to play the Great Qing. Hopefully this will go a little bit better than the last one we were in Great Britain. We ended up with a sort of forever war with Great Britain, and then with other stuff going on inside that one wasn't going the way I wanted it to. So, we're going to play Great Qing here. I'll explain a little bit more about Great Qing once we're into the game, but basically the rules are going to be as such, right? We're going to have Iron Man disabled. Victoria 3 hasn't necessarily been the most stable game for running Iron Man, so we're not going to turn that on. You can get all the achievements for that on anyway, so it's fine. And we're basically going to sit with the normal, well, what I think of as the normal one. So I think technically default on... No, reset the defaults. This is the defaults. So basically running the default settings here for the Great Qing. And let's hop into the China, also known as the Great Qing. So, we sit here at the beginning of Victoria 3, basically at the beginning of Great Qing's historic, what's known as the Century of Humiliation. So, needless to say, stuff does not go well for the Great Qing during this century. And we don't have the journal entry yet. We can probably glean what the journal entry that's about to come up is, based off of the Fragile Unity here. We're about to go into... Spelling where events? There should be a way in here to tell what it does. Oh, interesting. I'm not able to see in here what ticks this down, but we start with Fragile Unity, representing China's ability to sort of fall apart into the warlord era, which would be basically the end of Victoria 3 with China. And that sort of destabilization and the decline of China sort of starts off historically with the Opium Wars. In earlier patches, there were various different ways that you could go about winning the wars fairly reliably. The most recent one that I'm aware of was that you could reliably get an alliance with France, and by dragging France into the war, you could use France as a staging ground for the war, so you could very rapidly land Singapore, I think one of the Indian territories, the African territories, and British Guiana over here. Mainly needed France for the staging to get into Guiana before they put the fleet and block that. A couple patches before that, you didn't even need France because England wouldn't defend if you were trying to invade Guiana. But that got patched, so England was a little bit better at defending themselves. A little bit before that was the changes that made it so you had to get war operations and such. You had to occupy stated land, which for Great Britain is the islands, the home islands, which is basically impossible to do. So prior to that patch, you would just declare for Guiana and Singapore, and you could win the war that way by enabling those places. England wouldn't proactively respond to defending those places quickly enough. And then before even that, we've got a modifier because we have the Opium War about to happen. Find my modifiers. Oh, maybe we don't start with the modifier will show up in a if we're going to pause the game. So we have a modifier that's applying like a -50 to attack and defense. In earlier versions, that was weaker. So back before it got nerfed, you could simply stop them from landing you, and you can force them a white piece that way. So there's been multiple different ways of winning the Opium Wars. In the current patch, there still are ways to do it, and I think people do still occasionally do it. From my experience, I find it's just easier to basically initiate a situation where you sort of cheese a treaty on the British so that you can sail through and complete the Opium Journal entry without having to fight the British is often the way I go about doing it. So at some point we're gonna do that. Before we get them paused, let's talk about some of the state of China here in the game. I'm trying to think of what the best map mode to see this is. So China's got a lot of nice rivers. So we got the Yellow River down here. We've got the Pearl River down here, and we've got the Yangtze River down here. Each of these rivers is providing market access, 5% extra market access, with the exception of the Pearl River. And that allows basically these states really late game to actually get up to 100% market access. We do have some things like caping Coalfield. We have some bad modifiers, of course. We have things like the Gobi Desert. So yeah, we got a lot of interesting states. One thing you'll notice with a lot of Chinese states, if you come look at their population and say, come look at their arable land, is you'll notice they have lots and lots and lots of peasants, and worse than having lots of peasants is that their subsistence farms are or are just about full in a lot of their major super large states. So in this case, this one's 96% full. So if you run out of peasant slots and your population continues to grow, if you're not building jobs faster than China makes new people, then you will have unemployment. Unemployment in this game suppresses pop growth. So right here at the beginning of the game, we got an annual predicted of like 0.68% growth. Now to be fair, that's because we haven't even paused yet. We already almost have 1 million unemployed in China. So that is suppressing our pop growth. So one thing we're going to run into is as we move through the game, we're constantly going to be trying to figure out how to employ our unemployed people. Simply because otherwise, and you can see down here, we got 100, almost 200,000 unemployed people here. So we need to find ways to get these people employed so that we can continue to grow our population. And that's going to basically be one of our running themes here, right? We have people. And if anything, what we need is jobs. Jobs. From a resource standpoint, we're not too bad off in resources, right? So, as is the case in most places in the world, you've got decent lumber. We don't have particularly great lumber, which is maybe actually a different thing to think about, is we got almost 26 down here, 20, 26, 23, 34. So we got some decent lumber options. The desert obviously has no lumber. So that may be something we want to look at in the future, is trying to get more lumber. But maybe that's also a thing to note, is not a lot of our neighbors have a lot of lumber, right? Again, sort of 26 long camps. So we want to expand wood, but there's only so much you can expand wood. We got some nice iron provinces up in the north. The flip side of the note is, of course, that yes, we've got some really nice iron provinces, but our provinces that actually have a lot of the great iron, so up here and here, right? Okay, 20,000 peasants. This is another nice iron province. Not even 20,000 peasants, right? So we got a problem with a lot of our nicer iron provinces are actually potentially in situations where we don't have the peasants necessarily work them. So that's not necessarily too bad. We got a few decent ones that have got iron sources, right? So here we almost have 1 million peasants. But yeah, we have places that are highly populated, and we have places that are almost empty. Right, so early on we kind of want to convince people to move from places where we got people to places where we don't have people. Now, if we get into the starting Chinese laws, we start on serfdom. Serfdom has a big drawback, which is it disallows mass migration, internal migration, for peasants. And even once we get off of it, that only allows mass migration. It doesn't disallow internal migration if we go to tenant farmers. So early on, we might actually be trying to go into homesteading, just so that we can have the peasants that are unemployed in South China move to the desert and the North China areas, so that we can not have to build quite as many jobs right in the beginning. China also has some unique government IGs. So for example, for our nobility, normally everyone really dislikes the nobility. In the case of China, you have one of their ideologies is swapped out for scholar gentry. This makes it a lot easier to play around a scholar official government, because scholar gentry normally is replacing their scholar official's preference, or the aristocrat's preference, for being on traditionalism or agrarianism. So this means we can use IGs such as the rural folk or later on the industrialists to move to other government form or economic forms. We also have a special religious IG in the form of the Confucian scholars, which actually don't start off with a preference for any schooling or any healthcare, which can be a good and a bad thing. It means it's really hard to get into healthcare and education really early on, but it also means that they're not necessarily standing in the way of you getting to the healthcare and religion, the schools you want. And they also are one of the ones with a nice asceticism, so you can get the radicals and political movements down fairly easily if you empower the religious faction. Weirdly, they also, I think, have the literati here have a slightly different set of laws, I believe, as well. So I think our literati don't actually care for education. Yeah, our literati don't actually care for education. Which again is one of those that kind of gets in the way of trying to pass education reforms, which early on is going to be hard and expensive to afford anyway. But yeah, we got a special scholar gentry, we got a special Confucian scholars. I think the literati are special as well, because they don't care about education. Otherwise, we've got basically the normal IGs. Oh, and then on military, we also get our military has newly created army instead of the damage up effect in the central one. So you can also stack military good cost reduction fairly strong on China. So you can have very, very, very massive armies that don't cost a lot. Because you can combine that, you can technically, if you have a powerful army, right, that gets up to 30%. So you can get 30% plus what's coming from peasant levies, plus there's a power block modifier that's military goods cost down. Military good cost down is really strong in that it doesn't reduce what the factories get paid for the military goods they're producing, but it reduces what you as the government pays. So if you can stack that high enough, it's basically a free money multiplier where your government military spending invests more into the industry expansion than you would normally expect. And we start with no institutions. But you can see, as China, we have a lot of people, so institutions are expensive. And we still want them, because everyone wants institutions. At some point, we're probably going to very quickly move on to, say, dedicated police force, so we're gonna be having institutions fairly quickly here. Okay, and then research-wise, China starts with it's one of the nations that starts with the unique texturicultural, which makes all our silk plantations better. And while we start fairly backward, we're not one of the necessarily the most backward nations of the game. Annoyingly, we don't start with railways. We don't start with stock exchange. We don't start with romanticism or empiricism. And then here in military, we don't even start with mandatory service, right? So we need to work up to line infantry. So our really early tech-wise, just to fix some bad things we have with the government, right? We're stuck on traditionalism. We'd like to probably swap over to agrarianism, so we want to probably invent romanticism really early on. And then after that, we probably want stock exchange for that market access. And then fairly early on, we're going to want to swap over. Find I think it's down here. Proportional taxes. Yeah, we're going to want to swap over to proportional taxes. Because right now we're starting on land taxes, which, if we get into laws, start land-based taxation, which you'd think with a lot of land, a lot of peasants would be really strong. And in a way it is, right? And we're producing almost 200,000 in revenue from land-based taxation. And it would be a apparent detriment to swap over to proportional taxation. One reason, too, however, is in many ways our taxation is basically already capped. There is no more taxation we're getting if we sit in land-based taxation, because the income tax effect on land-based taxation is so weak. The land tax is flat. The land tax is almost saturated. There's almost no more capacity to get more land tax in China. On the other hand, as we start to industrialize and get much more construction, the stronger income tax on proportional taxation, the stronger dividend tax on proportional taxation is going to become really strong. Obviously, we can't even pass that yet, so we don't need to worry about that until we can pass that. Right? We need to go after traditionalism, and we need to get egalitarianism, but we'll probably skip straight over per capita, because per capita isn't quite as much of a problem, because it's got a flat per capita tax. But one problem with the flat taxes is a lot of Chinese states start off with some really bad taxation capacity. And the flat taxes are really good when you have taxation capacity. They're not very good when you hit the situation where you're well over the taxation capacity, because it's not worth building the bureaucracy to recoup that taxation capacity when the taxation is a flat tax. It can be in situations where you're building very heavy percentile taxes, though. Okay, so early tech goals, we're going to pick up Romanticism, build into Romanticism, into stock exchange. We'll see where the spreading is down here. We do basically want to do atmospheric engine, mechanized tools, railways, right? In production, we want to get into railways fairly quickly. Once we have Romanticism, stock exchange, railways, we're going to probably be looking to contemplate activating the journal entry for getting recognition, which I believe is nationalism. And then after we have that, we're going to want line infantry. With line infantry, we'll then basically declare war on Russia for recognition. So we've selected our tech. International diplomacy, we have 2 subjects. We're not necessarily going to be doing a lot of international diplomacy right off the bat. We have 3 subjects. We'll be improving on a couple of subjects. Probably improve Russia for the moment. We're going to go to war with Russia, but for the moment we might as well improve. We start with 3 declared interests, though our upcoming crisis sort of thing is going to take one away, so we'll just take it off of Japan for the moment. We start with the bureaucracy deficit, but I think we're still going to build construction sectors first. I'm not going to swap over to iron building right away, which means we'll need to build more construction sectors. As the economy improves, that will probably be something I actually do, is we'll start swapping things over to the steel one from the wood one, instead of building more construction sectors. Use of the site, we're going to want to put that roughly where we already have access to iron and population. So that's a twofer that we're going to want to look at, right? We want population and iron in the places where we're going to want to build up our construction sector to start with. So that's going to be places like Shaanxi, Beijing, Hebei, Inner Mongolia is probably about as low population we want, right? There's a couple places out here that have iron but just don't have the population to really support our industrialization. Southern Manchuria, Northern Manchuria, that doesn't really have enough population, that doesn't really have enough population. Yunnan is an interesting one for a population standpoint. And then we do have a bunch of... We already looked at it earlier, we've got some unemployed people in Eastern Gudong. Though Eastern Gudong doesn't have any coal. So this is our going to be fun trick, right? So we probably want coal and iron. Because coal is an input into making tools. Okay, so let's... We got that one, that one, that one, that one. Those 6 all looked pretty decent. Put some structure sectors in all of them. And yeah, each of these is going to cost about 2,000 to operate. Well, they'll probably be a little less when we go back to the normal government wages, but we should probably budget around normal. Okay. So we got 6 assigned. We probably want to build like 14 to start with. It's 12, and we're mostly building those places. So that's, well, 24 actually, yeah. Oh, 6 provinces is going to be 4 each, so... Decree-wise, what do we look for? We'll start with political movements. Early political movements, we're going to want to suppress our absolutist movement. Because our absolutist movement is going to oppose some of the things we're going to want to pass early game, right? They're going to oppose homesteading. They're going to oppose getting off of traditionalism, right? We definitely want to get off of traditionalism. The aristocrats, which are our most powerful interest group, don't care. But with the new movement system, the movements that they support care. So we do want to suppress this movement so it doesn't get too strong early game while we're trying to pass a various set of things. Mainly the fact that we want to probably go on to agrarianism and homesteading real early, which we can do fairly easily with rural folk. Once we unpause and give it a little bit of passing time, we'll get a 4th movement, which is going to be the peasant movement, I believe. They're going to want homesteading, for example. I think they might even want agrarianism. Less sure about that. So we'll empower that group as well. And then probably going to invest mostly in decrees. So we're going to want to road maintenance, probably Shaanxi, Beijing, and probably social mobility, those 2 places. These are some of the bigger states with both coal and iron. So we're probably going to focus initially on trying to build them up a little bit. Though we're mostly going to be, other than that, trying to spread stuff around construction-wise for the most of the consumer goods. That leaves us with 200 more infamy, or 200 more authority. Well, we'll get a little bit more than that. We got 280, but leaves us with 200. I'm not going to go ahead and sign that right now. Once we unpause and we get the peasant movement, we'll probably bolster the peasant movement, which will lead to the last 200. And then we'll start dealing with other things. So government-wise, I'm going to go ahead and keep the righteous government that we have right now. When we get... Well, that's a good question. Yeah, we'll keep the righteous government right now. What I might do is we might reform the government in a little bit after we complete our construction. And then bring in this group. This group will support swapping over to dedicated police. One reason to do that early on is you can get a journal entry that's a faction in government proposing a law change, because they're in government and they should be able to do that. If I let that happen while we have the scholar officials in government, the most likely law change they're going to request is that we move from no policing, which they oppose, to local police force, which they endorse, right? So usually when you get that sort of demand, it's usually going to be to move away from a stance that a faction in government opposes. Scholar officials are almost always going to be in our government for almost the entirely early game. So we're going to run into situations where if we are on laws that they oppose, they're going to try to propose moving away from them. Early on, that obviously means we have a problem, right? If they go ahead and propose local police, we really don't want local police. We'd much rather have dedicated police. Because it's just better than local police. It might, well, I think technically it's a little bit worse per level. Yeah, it's minus 10%. State penalties from terminal versus minus 15. But dedicated police, I think, has 2 more max levels, right? So we're going to want dedicated police over local police. So we want to probably pass this before the scholar officials can basically demand that we do the other one. Because they won't ask for local police if you've given them dedicated police, but they will ask for local police if you're on no police, is the thought process there. So once we're ready to start building bureaucracy, that's what we're going to do, is we're going to swap from none to dedicated. Once that's done, hopefully we'll be roundabout when we're done with the Romanticism, which is what we're researching right now. So we can move from traditionalism to agrarianism. In which case, we'll make a different coalitional government, which will be the scholar officials plus the rural folk for that. So we got concept of a basic building done. I'm not going to reorg the army right now. The army's kind of a mess. It's all over the place. But effectively for our first war, we're just going to accept that we're going to lose the first war. So I'm not too worried about that. So for the moment, let's actually go ahead and just unpause and let some time pass. So we're getting some journal entries coming up. There's some potential ones we're going to be on the lookout for. Oh, it's colonization, not nationalism. So we'll have to pick up colonization fairly early on so we can earn recognition. That might actually make it easier because colonization is a tier 1 tech. Yeah, okay. So our tech goal is going to be romanticism, stock exchange, railroads, colonization, line infantry. It's going to be a really set. And then we're going to have a war with Russia. I am surprised we have not had the opium event already fire. It's only been... there it goes. I was about to say, it's only been like a week, but, you know. Okay, so here's the opium event. As you can see, -50% offense, -50% defense. Didn't just remember this was one of the effects on it, but plus 50% morale loss, so... yeah, they've nerfed... yeah, they've gone ahead and pretty heavily nerfed China. So we're going to press we have to do something here. One of the possible actions here is going to be ban the opium trade. Have we got... we haven't had the peasant movement pop up yet. I might delay banning the opium trade until the peasant movement pops up. But either way, we're going to... the sort of light cheese to getting around the Opium War here is that we start... maybe not one for 30... start a small war with India. Take a little bit of aggressive experience, or a little bit of infamy. Get this war started. So we can see, right, they'll primary demand war reparations right off the bat. They won't primary demand the treaty port. So that allows us to be in a situation where we can keep stuff going. Keep from losing the opium crisis without actually fighting the war, just the cost of war operations. Okay, so we could back down at any point. We probably should back down sooner rather than later. A little disappointing that the political movement hasn't popped up yet. We'll just take the hit. Okay. So we're gonna back down here. First, we ban the opium trade, and then we back down. So now the opium crisis will end in 5 years. Right just as the treaty with Great Britain ends. Which, okay, that's costing us money. We're basically having to now pay Great Qing, or as Great Qing paid Great Britain 27,000 a year, but we can afford that. That's not too bad. And in exchange, we basically don't lose the opium crisis. And that will allow us to build up much faster. Under construction's underway, tech's going. And that's basically our start. We can still go up to 200. Yeah, we can still go up to 200. Okay. Now we're just waiting for... And I'll probably turn the speed up, because we're constructing, and we're waiting for our fourth glue movement here to spawn. And the fourth one should, I believe. I believe we have enclosures. Yeah, we start with enclosures, so it should pop up. There it is. Peasant movement, political movement started. So we raise the government wages we have, 200 power. Come over to overview, peasant movement, bolster. So they support the land reform, they support the taxation reform. So that's where we're getting early taxation and land reform going. And with that done, we can come back over here. We had some wages to medium. Being short on authority is not actually all that big of a problem. It's hard to spend into the negatives with it, usually. And with that, I think that's actually probably a good place to put the part break in. We've basically done the setup. We've made it so that we're guaranteed to sort of succeed on clearing the Opium Wars. And then we're going to keep playing. A lot of what we're going to be doing early from a government construction standpoint is building construction, building things that feed construction, and building things that give bureaucracy. We can say we really haven't even done anything, and our bureaucracy is already negative. And it's going to get worse. So once we got the construction sectors done, actually that's going to be the main thing we move on to, is building bureaucracy. More and more bureaucracy to deal with our nearly 400 million people. So until the next part, I'm going to be recording this series when I have free time, so it's going to be basically going up one part a day, but there may be gaps when I don't have time to record. So this is not going to get streamed on the 5-day cycle. So the game might have the recordings might have a non-standard release time. I think I am going to record one more part today, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can probably expect me to be a part of tomorrow. If you're watching on Twitch, feel free to hang around. During the part break, I'm going to go ahead and reorganize the army, because it's just a lot of clicking, and I don't think the people on YouTube want to watch that. Whereas if you're here on Twitch, you'll see me how I do it. It's not very creative. I just sort of merge everything into 3 armies, which is probably not the best way to do it, but it's the way I do it. So with that, wish you all the best of luck and a good time. And with that, catch you all in the next part. Bye for now.